link with your colleagues, you may please feel free to do that. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining. I would like to start by wishing all of you on the 100th International Day of Cooperatives. Coops Day is celebrated annually on the first Saturday of July by cooperatives across the world since 1923. It aims to increase awareness of cooperatives and promote the ideas of international solidarity, economic efficiency, equality, and world peace. This year, on 2nd July, we all celebrated the 100th International Day of Cooperatives. And this year also marks the 10th anniversary of the UN International Year of Cooperatives, 2012. This year's slogan, Cooperatives Build a Better World, re-emphasized the theme of International Year of Cooperatives, which was Cooperative Enterprises Build a Better World. So today, through this panel discussion, we will aim to map the growth trajectory of the cooperative movement in the Asia and Pacific region since 2012, the International Year of Cooperatives. I would like to invite Mr. Bala Subramanian Iyer, a Regional Director of ICA Asia and Pacific, to share his welcome remarks.
Thank you, Simran. Thank you, Shivali. And good morning, everyone. Happy International Day of Cooperatives. Over the weekend, it was heartening to see cooperators and cooperatives across the globe celebrate the International Day of Cooperatives with much enthusiasm. As Shivali mentioned, the theme for this year's International Day of Cooperatives is Cooperatives Build a Better World. It echoes that of the International Year of Cooperatives, which was celebrated in 2012. During that time, the world was coming out of the financial turbulence of 2008, and cooperatives were seen to provide some hope and clarity of direction for citizens around the world. In the 10 years between 2012 and 2022, cooperatives have progressed at various levels. If we look at the international level, the work of cooperatives has been recognized in the voluntary national reviews on the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals of several countries. In fact, this week, countries are meeting at the UN at the high-level political forum to discuss the voluntary national reviews. And I'm sure many countries will be presenting the work that cooperatives have done in their respective countries. In 2016, UNESCO added cooperatives to the list of intangible cultural assets. Cooperatives were described as entities that allow for community building through shared interest and values, creating innovative solutions to societal problems. And most recently, the resolutions and conclusions from the ILO Conference on Decent Work and Social and Solidarity Economy explicitly mentions cooperatives in the definition of SSEs. At the government level also, cooperatives have been recognized and are being seen as vehicles to enhance contribution to the GDP. For example, in India, the government has created a new Ministry of Cooperation. Yesterday, we had a big event to celebrate International Day of Cooperatives, which was jointly organized by the National Cooperative Union of India and the Ministry of Cooperation. And we were given a picture of the direction the government of India is envisioning for cooperatives. Similarly, in countries like Malaysia, cooperatives have been given a target to increase their contribution to the GDP. It's the same in the case of Iran. So cooperatives are being asked to step up by governments as it's seen as an alternative to either the government-led model or the corporate-led model. And during these years, cooperatives themselves have been making significant gains and impact. And if we just pick one event or occurrence that we can say has transformed our lives, it would be the COVID-19 pandemic, which we are still going through. Cooperatives during this time have risen again to the occasion. The 2021 World Cooperative Monitor documents the role of cooperatives in addressing needs of community during the pandemic, and it mentions that action by cooperatives spread an economic model that is more sustainable and more inclusive. Participation and attention to members and the community focus have guided cooperatives. So we've seen a lot of changes have happened between 2012 and 2020-22. And our speakers today will tell us what has changed. We will hear from the perspective of cooperatives, apex organizations, government officials, and from supporters of cooperatives at the United Nations. So I'd like to thank them all for joining us today and sharing their views. In particular, I'd like to thank Dr. Chandrapal Singh Yadav, the ICAP president, who's joined us today. And I would also like to thank you all who have registered and joining us today. So I look forward to the presentations and hearing about how cooperatives have changed between 2012 and 2020-22. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iyer. I would now like to request Dr. Chandrapal Singh Yadav, President of ICA Asia and Pacific, to please share his opening remarks.
Dear cooperators, greetings and good morning, all of you. I am glad to be present here today and share my thought on this very proud 100th International Day of Cooperative. On 2nd July, cooperatives worldwide celebrated the 100th International Day of Cooperatives, IDC. I am happy to mention that cooperative in India, Sri Lanka and Philippines have shared information on their celebratory event. All other members are also encouraged to celebrate and share the outcomes of the celebration. The 100th IDC is also very significant as it is considering with the decade of the United Nations International Day of Cooperative 2012 IYC. The United Nations General Assembly declared 2012 as the IYC International Year of Cooperative, highlighting this contribution of cooperative to sustainable socio-economic development, particularly their impact on poverty reduction, employment generation, and social integration. The theme of the IYC was Cooperative Enterprises Build a Better World. With the theme Cooperative Build a Better World, the IDC encouraged the growth and development of cooperatives and aimed at creating awareness among individuals, communities, and governments to recognize the contribution of cooperative in building a better world. Time and again, cooperatives have come together during crisis to pull together their resources and stand in solidarity with fellow cooperators and their community in their own country as well as for the international fraternity. Be it the Japan tsunami 2011 and Nepal earthquake 2015 as Australian bushfires in 2020 or the recent typhoons in Philippines in 2021, cooperative have selectively taken steps to support those affected. The outbreak of COVID-19 devastated life and dis- disrupted livelihood. The challenge and presenting the cooperative have stood together and exemplified resilience, solidarity, and cooperation. Cooperative not only provided support to their countrymen, but also pooled resources and provided fund and materials to other countries. The cooperative joined hands and contributed to government's relief fund or wider coverage of the relief. The cooperative supported the community in very way possible, right from providing information and spreading awareness to distribution of relief and food packages to setting up oxygen plant and support fund, etc. As people country value-based enterprises opening on the principles of democratic and particular but participatory governance, member engagement, and concern to country. Cooperative reflect the value of a community. Cooperative are continuously helping in creating a better world through providing decent jobs, members, economic participation, capacity building, resource generation, community social responsibility, and leadership development. The cooperative operate in every sector of the livelihood from agriculture, fisheries, forestry, dairy, textile to banking and credit, housing and healthcare, insurance, workers and industrial segments, etc. Today, the cooperative worldwide comprise of 1 billion cooperators from 3 million cooperatives and provides job to 280 million people, 10% of the world's employed population. The policymakers and governments have been recognizing the contribution of cooperative worldwide. In New Zealand, 18% of the country's GDP is generated from cooperative businesses. The government in the United Arab Emirates, realizing the potential of cooperatives, had allowed listing their share in the stock exchange and had set agenda of them entrepreneurial and contribute 5% of the GDP by 2030. The government of India established a new Ministry of Cooperation in 2021 with an aim to encourage prosperity through cooperatives and call upon cooperative to play a major role in making India $5 USD trillion economy by 2025. The contribution of Nepal considers cooperative as a third pillar of economy. Malaysia is one of four countries in the Asia and Pacific region which published the national ranking of the cooperative based on qualitative measures. The Australian government has recognized cooperative and listed theme uh, uh, alongside other businesses structures on the official website. However, all is not well with the cooperative and are facing various challenges from the time to time. In order to enhance the capacity of cooperative in building a better world, it is very important and urgent to strengthen the institutions. The policy support and collaboration from the governments is crucial. Due to the unprecedented challenge, the COVID-19 pandemic and imposed and continued effect of people, it is no more business as usual. The cooperative must adopt changes such as technology, digitalization, and innovation in order to stay useful and relevant to the changing needs of people and the market. Cooperative need to explore and invest in innovation and renewable energy. I would like to call upon cooperators to come together in furthering the spirit of cooperation worldwide, attracting and involving more youth and women in the cooperative movement, facilitating trade among cooperatives and address climate action to building a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yadav, for your opening remarks and mapping out the various services that cooperatives provide to different sectors and the role they play during a crisis situation. Unfortunately, our keynote speaker, Mr. Andrew Alimadi, who's the coordinator for cooperative issues at the UN DESA, he could not join us today. So we would like to start with our first panel. And for that, I would like to invite my colleague, Mr. Ganesh Gopal, who will be the moderator for this panel. Ganesh, you may please begin.
Thank you, Shivali. I'd like to firstly extend a warm welcome to our colleagues and friends who have joined us today. The first panel is on how do cooperatives as human-centered businesses address socio-economic development issues, contribute to the achievement of SDGs, and help build resilience among communities during crisis. So we will have country-specific examples on how cooperate act as human-centered businesses and address these. We have four panelists from four countries, Iran, Nepal, Japan, and Australia. So I would like to start by inviting Ms. Chitra Kumari, who is the General Manager of the National Cooperative Federation of Nepal, NCFN, to start with her presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ganesh Gopal. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Respected Dr. Chandrapal Singh Yadav, President of ICAP, respected Mr. Balu Iyer, Regional Director of ICAP, and all panelists, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, namaste and good morning from the country of Mount Everest, the highest peak of the world, Nepal. And first of all, I'd like to sincerely thanks to the ICAP for providing me this wonderful opportunity. And without delay, let me start briefly about the development of cooperative movement of Nepal basically after 2012. And my presentation was mostly about the development of cooperative movement in Nepal since 2012 and cooperatives' contribution on socio-economic development and cooperatives to build resilient communities during a crisis and cooperatives contributing to achieve SDGs. Let me first briefly inform you about the development of cooperative movement in Nepal since 2012. The number of cooperatives has been increased significantly. There were only 23,301 cooperatives in 2012, but at the moment there are more than 30,000 different kind of primary cooperatives in Nepal. Likewise, the number of cooperative members has increased from 3.1 million to 7.3 million. At the same time, the share capital and the business turnover of the cooperative have been increased rapidly. And cooperatives has been playing important role on women empowerment, income generation, leadership development, employment opportunities, and many more. Most significantly, the Constitution of Nepal has recognized cooperative sector as one of the important pillars among public and private for the economic development of Nepal. And the cooperative network also expanded throughout the country. Out of the 753 local, the cooperative have meaningful presence in 749 local level. And earlier, people also do not have much idea on cooperatives. However, now the public and private media development partners are interested to work with us. And we have very much active representation and participation in international organization or forum too, like ICA, ICAP, NEDAP, etc. And at the moment, we have a new Cooperative Act and regulation. As a federal structure of the government, the all level of government, local, provincial, and federal government, they have authorities for registration of cooperative supervision and regulation. And after the 2012, there has been qualitative growth in cooperative as they are more focused on institutional development, service diversity, and so on. And one of the most outstanding achievement of cooperative movement of Nepal, we have been able to develop formal cooperative curriculum in school and university level. The Tiruvani University is ready to launch the MBA course in cooperatives and entrepreneurship development. Now, let me talk about the cooperative's contribution on socio-economic development. Recently, we have been able to conduct the study and research on the contribution of cooperatives in poverty alleviation in 4 provinces of Nepal with the technical support of Kathmandu University, which is the renowned university or institution, and we have received very impressive result. Cooperatives, some are cooperatives are providing financial access to start new businesses, cooperatives improving social justice through empowerment of Dalits, marginalized people, women and single women, and cooperatives supporting on entrepreneurship development. Cooperatives also improving living standard of cooperative members, such as access to consumption, sanitation, education to their children, health facilities. If we compare the cooperative members and non-members, cooperative members have better living conditions. And cooperatives also helping on knowledge and technology transfer in upscaling, and cooperatives also increasing production and services. You can see on the chart, the research also shows the members are satisfied with the service of cooperatives in Nepal. And cooperatives to build resilient communities during a crisis. Nepal is prone to natural disaster. Frequently, we experience landslides, floods, fire, earthquake too. In such disaster, cooperatives show their identity by involving rescue and rehabilitation of community people and cooperatives. During the devastating earthquake in Nepal 2015, cooperatives are engaged in the rescue and relief program, distributed more than 50 million rupees to the victims of 14 affected districts, and also less affected cooperatives supported heavily affected cooperatives and members, distributing relief materials, foods, clothes, and also temporary shelter. And cooperatives also continued financial services to its members during the time of disaster and insurgency. And NCF, the National Cooperative Federation of Nepal, on behalf of the cooperative movement, contributed to the Prime Minister Disaster Relief Fund more than rupees 10 million till date. And during the first and second wave of COVID-19, cooperatives have supported to the COVID hospital by providing oxygen concentrator, PCR machine, health kits, diet pack to the members as a part of the concern for community. And cooperatives promote digital platform for member or community. And this is my last slide. Cooperatives contribute to achieve SDGs. Actually, while SDG was firstly introduced in the country, in Nepal, the cooperative movement were among the first to organize SDG programs or agenda. We have been able to organize a number of national, provincial, and local level programs on SDG and how cooperative can play active role to achieve SDGs. Accordingly, a large number of cooperatives, our member organization and primary cooperatives, they organize various programs which were reflected in the various publications and pamphlets, banner, articles, social media, and so on. And NCF also developed SDG implementation guidelines for all level cooperatives, stating possible activities, responsibility, and measuring indicators. Earlier, it was very hard to convince the government people on the role of cooperatives to achieve SDGs. However, due to our continuous efforts, cooperative sector have been included in the SDG implementation and evaluation committee, and that is chaired by the vice chair of National Planning Commission, and also various thematic committees chaired by the members of National Planning Commission. It's my also pleasure that to inform you that the Nepal has already submitted 2 Vienna report on high-level political forum in 2017 and 2020. While preparing the Vienna report itself, Government of Nepal priorities cooperative sector and hold continuous meeting with us. As a result, cooperatives and its effectiveness were reflected on Vienna report, and also cooperative good practices are mapped in Vienna 2020. Let me conclude my deliberation, there has been significant change and progress in cooperative movement of Nepal after 2012, and contributing on the socio-economic development and building resilient community and contributing to the achieve SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you all and wish you all the best and happy International Day of Cooperatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chitra Kumari Subha, joining us from Nepal, and these wonderful examples that you've quoted from your country. I think quick takebacks that I can say is, Nepal has been making forward-looking amendments to the law itself, changes to the law, where the federal structure and even decentralizing to all levels of government. Secondly, the school curriculum itself, you have included cooperatives, which is a very welcome sign. With the right at a very young age, we're trying to get cooperatives, youngsters involved in cooperatives. Of course, the examples of resilience from the earthquakes and during COVID have been extremely inspiring. And also international participation is another example that we can always look up to from Nepal, ranging from VNRs to the implementation guidelines for the SDGs and participation at the United Nations. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to call upon Mr. Jiro Ito, who is here from Japan. He's the Executive Assistant to the Senior Managing Director of the Japan Cooperative Alliance. Another interesting thing about Mr. Jiro, he has worked not just now as part of the ICAP family, but ICAP staff family at the point from 2002 to 2005. He was with our ICAP Singapore Business Office. So welcome, Mr. Jiro. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for kind introduction. Let me share my presentation. Just a minute. Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share our experience with you. I am Jiro Ito. Now, last week, so I was elected as a managing director of JCA. I have worked for the JCCU for 36 years. And in this April, I started working for JCA, national coordination body of the cooperatives in Japan. And I have an experience of working for ICA regional office for Asia and the Pacific Singapore business office from 2002 to 2005, as the Mr. Ganesh explained. First of all, I would like to share with you some statistical figures on, just a minute. Yes. I would like to share with you some statistical figures on cooperatives in Japan. These national statistics have been published since the JCA was established in 2018. This is one of the outcomes of the establishment of JCA. Although the Japanese economy has been stagnant for some decades, but still it is large. So the share of cooperative is not so large. Like the last one, the value added by coop sector, the share is just only 1.8%. However, many of the Japanese cooperatives are ranked in the World Cooperative Monitor, which is published annually by ICA. So I could say they are still large part of the cooperative community in the world. Also, these figures are for fiscal year 2019, so they are not affected by COVID-19. Next, I would like to introduce some topics that have happened to Japanese cooperatives after 2012, the International Year of Cooperatives. Although the government declared its support for cooperatives during the IOIC, in 2014, when the government came to power with strong neoliberal tendencies, it began to promote the entry of joint stock companies under the guise of making agriculture a growth industry, and to move toward agriculture cooperative reform, including the inclusion of the agriculture cooperative law of allowing demutualization. Japanese cooperatives opposed this as an infringement of the independence and self-reliance of cooperatives. And ICA also gave its full support, including an investigation committee led by President Dame Pauline Green, who came to Japan to present their views to the Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries. Consequently, the government took the decision to leave agriculture cooperative reform to the JA's, Agriculture Cooperatives' own initiative, and the government will monitor the situation. In response to the agriculture cooperative reform, and in the face of emerging issues in Japan, such as the widening gap between urban and rural areas and the lives of the people, Japan Cooperative Alliance, JCA, was established with the belief that cooperatives must work together at local level to help solve these issues. The JCA was established with ICA member cooperatives as its core members, and the other cooperatives that had not been so close to ICA member corps as associate members, such as cooperatives of SMEs and the Shinkin Bank and the credit unions and so on. Thus creating a coordinating body of cooperatives in Japan. Another major news of the past decade was the passage of the Workers' Cooperative Law by the Diet in December 2020. Although workers' cooperatives have been active up to now, they have been operating under other corporate forms because there was no law to regulate them. For more than 20 years of campaigning, people involved in the movement have been working on it. And now that the JCA has been established, other cooperatives, including agriculture and consumers and so on, are also working together for the law to be passed. The law will go into effect in October this year, with all related regulation in place. Workers' cooperatives are expected to be a tool for solving these social issues and implementing decent work. The past 10 years have not been all easy and pleasant. As Mr. Yadav, the ICA, the president of ICAAP mentioned, in 2011, the year before of the IWC, the northeast area of Japan was hit by a magnitude 9 earthquake and tsunami, followed by an accident at a nuclear power plant. The local people and cooperatives were hard hit, but cooperative members from all over Japan, regardless of area or sector, came together in support of the relief efforts. Support for relief and reconstruction efforts in the affected areas was provided not only by public assistance, but also by companies, NPOs, and many individual volunteers. But especially cooperatives stand out as a unique entity with the resource of goods, money, and people, and a people-centered business entity. For example, in the case of a company, employees may participate as volunteers. But in the case of a consumer co-op, members, who usually are customers of the company, volunteers and visit evacuation shelters and temporary housing to provide foods and organize tea party and so many events and for communication. And through their continuous efforts, the bonds between co-ops and the affected areas and people were strengthened. The earthquake has also led to the formation of partnerships between consumer co-ops and agriculture co-ops in areas far from each other. And after the Great East Japan earthquake, natural disasters have occurred every year since then, including major earthquakes and floods caused by severe rainfalls and typhoons. With each occurrence, the level of disaster preparedness and mutual aid activities among cooperatives after the disaster has increased. COVID-19 had a serious impact on the lives and economic activities of people around the world. In Japan, people's lives have been exhausted by refraining from going out, and the spread of infection in the medical institutions and nursing care facilities, and the increased burden on workers have also occurred. In addition, the food service industry was hit hard, which had a major impact on food producers, including agricultural cooperatives. As an essential work, the cooperative's first priority is to produce and supply people with the necessities of life, and to continue the work of medical and nursing care, as well as to support those who have been forced into difficult situations by COVID-19. Lastly, I would like to talk about how cooperatives are working to address local issues and realize the SDGs. Since the establishment of the JCA, we have seen a gradual increase in the number of cases which different types of cooperatives at local level work together to contribute to solving problems. The government has taken notice of these activities, and the efforts on the part of cooperatives have been successful, with the JCA's senior managing director being selected as a member of the roundtable on SDGs promotion to hear peer opinions from the private sector on the promotion of the SDGs. And on 7th of July in United Nations, it was mentioned that there was a COPAC side event of the SDGs, the United Nations high-level political forums. Japanese government the representative will be making a presentation, including the cooperative activities in Japan. We will continue to work together with ICA and its member cooperatives at regional and global level to achieve the SDGs. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Ganesh, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jiro, for this wonderful presentation, and how the community has risen up at many points in Japan through cooperatives and engaged in working closely with the local areas in being resilient to crisis. You've cited the example of the East Japan earthquake. You've also cited how during COVID times there have been community diners with the cooperative members of a consumer cooperatives also getting hands-on in working with the community, which shows two things: one, that it's not a one-way street, and secondly, that the restoring much more faith in humanity at large, and engaging in closer people bonds. Thank you very much, and I hope the work that you undertake at JCA in the coming days also is reflective and continuing of this, and best wishes with the SDG Promotion Council as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Moving on to Mr. Anthony McCullen. Anthony McCullen is the Director and Secretary of Cooperative Bonds in Australia. But more importantly, he's also a cooperative expert who has developed and co-drafted the best practice governance framework for one of our ICA members in Australia, which is the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals. So welcome, Mr. Anthony, over to you.
Thank you. I'll just share my slides.
Could you kindly make it full screen?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking good. Thank you for inviting me today. It's a great honour to present to a global forum. I'm presenting on behalf of the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals and representing the CEO of Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals in Australia, Melina Morrison, who is currently, I think, probably on a jet plane. Before I start, I would like to say that I'm speaking here from Melbourne in Australia. And it's a custom now in Australia that we pay respect to the First Peoples, the First Nations. So I'd like to pay my respect to the Wiradjuri people of the Kulin Nation and pay respects to elders past and present. My presentation is on co-ops building a better world and contributions to sustainable development. I've been asked to talk about how cooperatives as human-centred businesses address socio-economic development issues, how they contribute to the achievement of the SDGs, and particularly building resilience among communities in a crisis, and talk a little bit about how the cooperative movement has grown in Australia since 2012, which is when I really started to get very involved in the cooperative movement, as chance would have it. So how do cooperatives work as human-centred businesses? Well, I think it's really good to start with something we're probably all aware of as those core values of the international cooperative movement, which are around being honest in our business dealings, being open, caring for others, and having a really strong sense of social responsibility. Recently, there was a federal Senate, there was an inquiry into financial services in Australia, where a lot of banks got into trouble, but not one member-owned, customer-owned mutual bank, credit union or building society had to go before that Royal Commission, because we act with a sense of social responsibility, honesty, openness and caring. And I think that's these are really important core values to hold on to internationally. I think the other thing to think about is that cooperatives are not owned by distant shareholders, they're owned by members. They're not doing anything to make money, they're making money to do something good. They're not based on the principle of profit maximisation. It's all about maximising member benefit. And when I've spoken to people that have worked in co-ops or mutuals that have demutualised, one of the things that they always tell me about is how the focus has moved from members to external investors and shareholders. So I think that's just really important, is that member-driven focus that we share as in Australia and as a global movement. So how are CMEs, and I'm using this term CMEs, cooperatives and mutual enterprises, because in Australia we sort of put the two together. They're kind of two sister or sibling type of enterprises. How are we meeting current and future challenges? And rather than go into something that's really big picture, I've just got some examples in a range of areas: affordable housing, renewable energy, climate change, aged care, worker rights, Indigenous Australian employment and food security. So one of the key SDGs is sustainable cities and communities. An example of that is common equity cooperative housing in Australia, which provides housing for seniors, older single women, key workers, people living with a disability, and it has the highest tenant satisfaction and engagement in Australia in that area. Climate action, example of that would be Hepburn Wind, which is a community-owned wind farm. It was formed through community investment. It now has 2,000 members in a regional community, and it produces enough clean energy for over 2,000 homes. Reducing inequality. An example of Australian cooperative in this area is Silk, supporting independent living cooperative. There is a scheme in Australia called the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which gives more user choice with disability services. And what the cooperative has found is that by getting those people together that have a disability in group houses with the attendant carers or employees that assist them, using the cooperative model, they can pool some of their money and resources and live more in a community and supported environment, which is really about the self-help and solidarity kind of principles that underpin our movement. Decent work and economic growth. Great little innovative cooperative here in Melbourne is called Redgum. They are a worker-owned cooperative providing cleaning services from commercial to homes using eco-friendly products. And each worker has a democratic say in terms of their industry, which is great because in the cleaning industry, I'm sure globally, as we all know, cleaning work can be low status, can be low pay, and it can also be done in a way that's bad for the environment. So that's something that is a great little example. Good health and wellbeing. Indigenous Australian health services. Indigenous Australians often have lower health outcomes than the rest of the Australian population. It's important to remember that 10% of Aboriginal community-controlled health organisations are co-ops and mutuals with a turnover of 1.3 billion, I should say. The Aboriginal Medical Service Cooperative in Redfern is an example. And the idea is that people, Indigenous people, have a say and have community control over their healthcare. Hunger. An example of a great little co-op, again here in the state of Victoria in Australia, is Coop, which is a network that supports organic farmers. And recently they raised more than $300,000 for farmers impacted by the bushfires, which were mentioned earlier on. How do cooperatives contribute to the achievement of SDGs and help build resilience? Okay, I'm just going to focus a little bit on climate action. And again, I'm going to give a real life example of a cooperative in Australia. But one of the key focus areas that cooperatives and mutuals are focusing on is environment, social and governance reporting, and getting cooperatives and mutuals to focus more about that. And as Melina Morrison says, that these environmental, social and governance kind of frameworks are baked into the cooperative and mutual model. If you're forming a cooperative and mutual, you need to have a social focus. You need to have participation with members. And there are some great examples, particularly in the finance area, where credit unions and mutual banks are encouraging customer members to install solar and renewable energy with special loans, and are also divesting from fossil fuel investments. For the BCCM, the ESG and also mutual value measurement, measuring what we do, is a real priority going forward, to report on Australian and hopefully contribute to all of us reporting on the kind of global impact that we have. There's been a number of floods. There's a flood going on at the moment in Australia. There's been a lot of grants and fundraising for both bushfires and floods. Example, that there was a report recently done called Leading the Resilience Report by the Business of Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals. They found that cooperatives and mutuals are great in a crisis of keeping people in work, keeping people employed in cooperatives and mutuals. Cooperatives and mutuals have used their reserves for member benefit. And I just saw today that the insurance mutuals in Australia are waiving fees and contributions at the time when we're having floods and things like that. Very member focused and putting those benefits in place. Other things that this report found was that cooperatives and mutuals have acted really quickly when there's a crisis. Financial support has been there for Australian businesses. And there's also a sensitivity to the mental health challenges of employees and communities in the area. Example of an actual co-op that had to do something in the middle of a bushfire was around 2019. They just got into action, got donations from the local community, did a GoFundMe crowdfunding campaign, which gave all the members a voucher to be able to purchase services from the cooperative in, fuel, emergency feed for the animals and fencing. And they've actually found coming out of the crisis that their turnover has increased because they've been good corporate social citizens. So in Australia, cooperatives and mutuals last longer than the companies on the stock exchange. They last on average a full 17 years or 25% longer than those companies on the stock market. How have we grown since 2012? Well, in 2012, the top 100 co-ops and mutuals had about a 105 billion turnover, combined assets of 391 billion. There are around 1,700 co-ops registered. There are a total number of members of around 12 million and about 30,000 the number of employees. Today, I'll just give you a quick rundown of where we're at. It's a very quick clip. And just some really quick points of things that have happened. Since 2012, there was a big Senate inquiry, big federal government inquiry into cooperatives and mutuals. Came up with a lot of recommendations, and a really important thing was that all of the major parties supported cooperatives and mutuals. So we have multi-party support for cooperatives and mutuals in Australia, which is not seen in every other part of our political life. I'm sure that's in common with lots of other countries. We've had cooperative national law has come in, which has meant that every state and jurisdiction has laws that interact with each other. We can move across state and trade across state boundaries within Australia. Cooperative capital units were introduced, which is a new investment vehicle that allows for flexible investment from external investors into co-ops without the members losing control, which is really important. Mutual capital instruments, similar thing happened with mutual companies, member-owned companies, with allows for external investment, and there's been millions of dollars that have come through from some of our member-owned superannuation organisations into that area. And the mutuals actually had a definition of as a democratic member-owned company. So just quickly, we've got a $203 billion turnover now, more than $1 trillion in assets across cooperatives and mutuals in Australia. There are 1,832 cooperatives and mutuals now in Australia, 76,000 employees, 31 million memberships. Now that's combined. Lots of people are members of multiple cooperatives and mutuals. 8 out of 10 Australians are a member of at least one cooperative or mutual, but only 3 in 10 know that they are a member of a cooperative or mutual. So we've got a communication problem that we need to work on, and a definition and a public promotion challenge. And only 16% of Australians can name a cooperative and mutual, even though most of us are members. So there's more work to do in terms of promoting the model, getting the clearer definition out there into the community. So thank you for hearing my presentation today. I hope I haven't gone too long.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I think very beautiful examples that you've given us from various sectors, starting from SDG 11, affordable housing. And I love the way you started the presentation, in fact, paying honor and respect to the First Peoples and the elders. So that is another point where cooperatives have been able to step in. You rightly cited the example of Aboriginal Medical Community Cooperative. Faisal, our friend from Fiji, is also here. He'd be able to add probably in the next panel on how cooperatives have been instrumental in supporting indigenous communities. And I think the organic cooperative, the BCCM's work on the ESG framework and mutual value measurement, the corporate sector seems to be talking a lot about triple bottom lines. And here we have the cooperative equivalent where funding and financing is given to ESG and sustainable projects. And I think great examples that you've cited. So I'll open the floor now to question and answers. Unfortunately, our fourth speaker, Mr. Ali Reza, who is the Manager of International Relations at the ICC, the Iran Council for Cooperatives, he's not able to join us today. So I would like to open the floor for questions. And I think we have somebody who's already raised the hand. Kirvandaneya from Sri Lanka. Okay, I'm guessing that she's not here right now. So I'll move on to the next question. Chandana Pradeep Ranasinghe from the National Institute of Cooperative Development asks how the concept of solidarity economics is used to spread out cooperation. Maybe Anthony, you could take that question.
Solidarity economics. So I'm not. I mean, the way I would answer that would be that the value and the principle of solidarity is core to all cooperatives. And I think the way of thinking about this is that there is not only value that's created for people when they become a member of a cooperative, so between the cooperative as an entity and the member, but also between members. And that's often a thing that we need to think more about, I think, as a movement, is the sense of real solidarity and connection between members in cooperatives and then between various cooperatives in different sectors of the economy. And I think some of the new ways that we can think about developing enterprises is building communication and benefits between members, the value that can be created, for example, in worker cooperatives or independent worker cooperatives, where people can join together and have mutual insurance and things like that, but they can also become part of a community where they're collaborating with each other. They're working together in new ways. And I think that's the spirit we really need to start getting back into, is thinking about the real connection and glue between people, because the other part of it is just in terms of political economy, the more that we're making decisions and acting democratically in our enterprises, the more healthy our global political communities will be, because people will be learning how to act democratically at the local level.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I think we have another question from Ms. Rita Agarwal. What are the specific challenges confronting co-ops in the Asia and Pacific region, and what should be done to overcome them? Any of the panelists, please feel free to jump in.
I think regional director will be able to answer this question, because it is too wide and broad.
Maybe I'll come back to this question maybe toward the closing, when I get that'll help me to sum up all the presentations and also put across what I see are some of the issues that have come up. Maybe we can save this for the closing remarks.
Right. The audience, feel free to raise your hands. We can take your questions or also drop them on the chat box. There's another question from Mr. Abdul Malik, the cooperative officer of the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment in Nigeria. The world has been on a stage of recovery from pandemic. Many cooperative societies have vanished, while some are still in the process of reforming and others are still flashing. As a body that has a spirit of concern on collaboration and cooperation, are there any policies and programs designed to assist some of these societies come back to feet?
I'll just say that I think part of the problem that we have is, I think as I highlighted in my presentation, that people are not often aware of cooperatives being present in their local community. And they may be a member of a cooperative. They may go to a cooperative store, for example, but they haven't actually made the connection that it is a cooperative. So I think part of our problem is that we need to solve is to be able to promote the cooperative option in communities, and also have more education available. I mean, at every level, but particularly in tertiary education, where at least in Australia, it's possible for people to do a business degree, do a law degree, do an accounting degree or qualification, and for there to be no coverage of the cooperative or mutual model. And that means that accountants, lawyers, business people may not be aware of the differences. And also for startups, when they come in for accounting advice or want to start a business, the option of starting a cooperative or mutual will not even be there. So we've got a shared problem with getting that the cooperative model and opportunity out there to more people across the board, and to have greater community understanding of what we represent.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I think both the examples you cited earlier, one on affordable housing and the other on the supported independent living cooperatives, both aligned with the national policies, the National Disability Insurance Scheme. But probably people might be looking at the government supporting them and looking at many of these as government schemes. But I think co-ops intervene and make sure that these benefits are passed on to the specific marginalized communities. And I think from 3 out of 10 people knowing, I think it's a combined effort that we all need to take, probably on focusing on the fifth cooperative principle, education, information, and training, and probably informing all our members of how these values are important and how a cooperative is ultimately business is different from a company or any other form of private enterprise. So I think in the paucity of time, we'll have one last question. Itsumi from JCCU. The question is, how are cooperatives in your country affected by inflation, and what are the measures that have been taken? Any of the panelists, please feel free to jump in. Mr. Jiro?
But Itsumi is my colleague.
That's all right. I think we'd love to hear what Japan is doing in this respect.
Yeah, so now in Japan, so there are because of the some food conflict in Ukraine, the price of the natural resources and importing goods are very increasing. But compared to other countries, I think the inflation rate is not so high in Japan, just at 2% or something, I think. But compared to the price hike, the salary and the income of the people is very stagnant. And because of the COVID-19, some people are very facing financial difficulties by the COVID-19 and losing jobs and the salary cut. Then we have to, especially the consumer cooperative, the Itsumi is belonging, should support the people's life and livelihood. Then, on the other hand, also the farmers and the fisher folks and the producers are also facing difficulties because especially the needs of the restaurant and also the catering services are very facing difficulties, and then the producers also now having troubles because there is no place to ship that provide the farming the produce. Then consumer cooperative is now encouraging our members to buy more local products and also domestic products, and especially milk and vegetables and rice. But actually speaking, so it's not so easy because people need more the less price and the cheaper things. That's now our issues. So it's not. I don't think that I can answer her question. But now I share the Japanese experience.
Thank you, Mr. Jiro. I'll hand it over to Anthony, who wants to probably add to it. Anthony, one more thing, that a sub question that has come up in this regard is the liquidity in the face of this issue. Madam Chitra, we'll come to you right
Yeah. Mr. Ganesh, actually, after COVID-19, the economic sector has been badly affected. So the liquidity problem is not only on cooperatives. Other financial institution has also facing the same problem in Nepal.
Right.
Let me clear this one.
Okay. Anthony, would you like to jump in?
Oh yeah, just quickly, I think it's an opportunity to think about the roots of cooperatives and the Rochdale pioneers, and one of those things of providing the dividend back to people that were going to the original shops, and other ways of rebating, providing dividends. Because at a time when inflation is going up, if we can actually signal to members the financial benefit and quantify that and actually provide that provides a financial incentive, but it also literally helps our members to weather things. Also using the when there is tough environmental or economic conditions, the ability for cooperatives to go into their reserves, as they have done in Australia when there have been these terrible situations, and actually assist members in financial hardship because of these problems that we're all having, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's a bushfire, whether it's a flood, or whether it's rampant inflation. Again, I think this is about communicating the difference of being a member of the enterprise and being a co-owner. That is an opportunity for us to communicate that in a time of crisis.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony. I think it's a reminder, the words that Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the UN said, where cooperatives are a reminder to the international community that it's possible to pursue both economic viability and social responsibility at the same time. And going back probably to one of your earlier slides on cooperative purpose, profit is not a bad word. The question here is doing anything to make money, moving from that to making money to doing something good, and ultimately maximizing member benefit. And the point is well taken on the reserves that cooperatives have, unlike that of other enterprises, which would only probably focus alone on giving dividends and maximizing profit. So I think that's a very important point that you've raised. So I think we might have to wind up this session for now and move on to the second panel. Thank you very much, all the colleagues and participants who have actively taken part in this discussion. And thank you so much for the speakers and panelists for joining us today and sharing these specific views and examples from your respective countries. So moving on to the second panel. The subject that we're going to discuss here is what are the roles that governments and international bodies are playing to support an enabling environment for cooperatives. So we have an equal balance of two colleagues from international organizations and 2 colleagues from governments across the Asia Pacific region. Just to quickly introduce our first speaker, I would like to call upon Mr. Faisal Khan, who is the Director and the Registrar of the Department of Cooperative Business in the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Tourism in Fiji. So Faisal, good to see you again and welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, Ganesh. Good evening from Fiji, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you, depending on which part of the world you are in right now. I hope you guys can hear me clearly.
Perfect.
Ganesh, if you can hear me, thank you.
Yeah, perfectly. All right. So shall I shoot the first question to you and we'll start off? So the theme for this year is Cooperatives Build a Better World. Cooperatives in Fiji date back to the 20th century, and the government of Fiji has played a very instrumental role in the development of cooperatives by introducing cooperative-friendly legislations and regulations. Can you share a few key milestones that the Fijian government has taken towards creating an enabling environment for cooperatives?
Thank you, Ganesh. Essentially, the cooperative movement in Fiji goes back to 1947. Whilst the cooperative movement has withstood the test of time, the focus of the cooperative movement has increasingly moved from consumer cooperatives to agro-producer cooperatives, and now towards mechanized and value-adding cooperatives. Basically, they are moving up the value chain and now have diversified into other sectors. Our youth and women participation continue to grow as well. Ladies and gentlemen, just a snapshot of how cooperatives has moved pre-COVID to post-COVID. Pre-COVID times in 2019, our asset holding for cooperatives stood at 127 million, and there was close to about 376 cooperatives that are operating. Today, currently, as we speak, there are close to 430 strong and vibrant operating cooperatives that holds close to 133 million worth of assets. So the jump is from 127 million worth of assets to 133. In terms of operating cooperatives, is from 376 to 430. So that's close to a 15% jump. Although the recognition of the success goes out to the cooperatives themselves, the government, as policymakers, has also played a pivotal role in promoting and establishing an enabling environment in cooperatives. So it was done through the following manner. Firstly, it was providing access to finance. Our grant programs that is targeted towards the grassroots level has benefited cooperatives that has enabled them to access finance and capital and to purchase capital improvements. Whether it's our ministry itself, whether it's the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Sugar, whether it's the Ministry of Fisheries, or Ministry of Agriculture, these primary resource-based agencies have recognized that cooperatives are a sustainable and successful model to give out grants to. Capital items that have been purchased, such as rice harvesters, cane harvesters, tractors, boats, fish material, have been secured by cooperatives in attempt to launch businesses. Moreover, is our hand-holding services. Our hand-holding services is that our department or the Ministry of Commerce, under which the Department of Cooperatives is based, our officers goes out and continuously monitor the cooperatives and also offer business-friendly advice. Our officers, we also drive down the cooperative values and principles and the importance of compliance to the Act. Our officers also attempt to resolve any disputes that the cooperatives may be facing on the ground. Thirdly, in terms of the enablement environment, is that our department or our ministry, we offer cooperative-based trainings. So through the Cooperative College of Fiji, we have held 25 training sessions that has trained more than 963 Fijians, whilst in 2022, while we held 37 sessions that trained over 500 Fijians. So in 2021, although it was at the height of the pandemic, we managed to hold 25 training sessions that trained close to 1,000 Fijians, whilst in 2022 we have held 37 sessions and has trained more than 500 Fijians. Moreover, is government's focus on strategic partnerships. For example, we have partnered with development partners and development agencies, such as agencies under the UN, such as UN FAO, the ILO, the UNCDF, just to name a few, in the development of cooperatives. Currently, we are also working with the ICA in terms of modernizing the Cooperatives Act of 1996. So, in summary, how we've created an environment is first provide access to finance, provide hand-holding or aftercare services, cooperative training, and strategic partnerships.
Thank you so much, Faisal, for that well-articulated answer, listing down the initiatives that your ministry is taking in Fiji. So I'd like to quickly jump to the next panelist, Mr. Raman Ahuja, who is the national expert for value chains at the Food and Agricultural Organization, the India office. Welcome, Mr. Raman Ahuja. So I'll shoot the first question to you, which is how the FAO is a member for the Committee for Promotion and Advancement of Cooperatives and plays an important role in promoting and strengthening cooperatives. Can you share how FAO sees cooperatives building a better world?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ganesh, and to the organization for inviting FAO for this virtual dialogue. I must also point out the views that I share here are personal. FAO keenly supports cooperatives as they build a better world, particularly via rural people's empowerment. FAO recognizes the critical role of inclusive and efficient cooperatives in supporting small agriculture producers, marginalized groups, and also young people and women. We believe that cooperatives empower members both socially and economically, and indeed they create opportunities for sustainable rural employment. The business models will keep evolving as we go along, but I think more important thing here is that cooperatives have seemed to be more resilient internationally to economic shocks, and more recently to the climate crises that we are experiencing, and the black swan events like the COVID. Cooperatives are, in FAO's point of view, essential pillars for delivering food and nutritional security, and obviously contributing to the overall agriculture development of any ecosystem. So we've seen excellent examples from Japan and Australia, that cooperatives are well integrated into the overall economic structure, which empowers their farmers, including smallholders, across the food and agriculture sector. And I think this needs to be encouraged, and this is critical, to the FAO's agenda of delivering on zero hunger. Agriculture cooperatives offer small producers opportunities with a wide range of services. Now, when I say they offer these opportunities, doesn't necessarily mean that it's happening all over the world where cooperatives exist, but clearly these opportunities exist, including improved access to markets, access to natural resources, land and water, tenure rights, and so on and so forth. And in more recent times, the importance of information, communication technologies, etc., is becoming more so. Cooperatives become another source for accessing those ICTs. The traditional role of providing credit, warehousing, etc., is any case there from the agriculture cooperatives. Some of the areas where FAO works with cooperatives and producer organizations, I'm just going to highlight a few of them here. Supporting the establishment of an enabling environment, which includes assisting our member governments to develop regulatory and legal frameworks which are relevant to the local environment. It's a conducive investment climate, creating platforms for consultation, for policy-related dialogues that actually involve both cooperatives and producer organizations. So this is a very critical role that FAO sees for itself. The second example of where FAO is engaged is enhancing the participation of cooperatives in this policy dialogue, which will enable to advocate for the needs of cooperative members, making their voices heard at different fora. I think that's absolutely paramount, that there is an opportunity for cooperative members to be heard directly rather than via their associations or national governments and so on and so forth. Sharing knowledge, learning and training modules, good practices is another facet of FAO's role in supporting the cooperative movement. And finally, facilitating the development of the producers' capacities, including technical capacities, organizational capabilities, ability to market their production surpluses, to the nearby communities or far-flung markets, and obviously integrating to local and regional value chains wherever it is necessary. So these are some of the areas where FAO is very closely involved, and all of this is to deliver on its core agenda of zero hunger by 2030.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahuja. And also stressing on the earlier point that you mentioned, cooperatives essentially are moving away from, or additionally moving away from the traditional role from just credit and inputs in agriculture, but also being used as a vehicle for provision of ICT technologies. And right now we are moving towards cooperative members being heard directly, whether it be ranging from zero hunger to even the VNRs. You also highlighted the important roles that organizations like FAO have been playing in making conducive legal and regulatory frameworks which are relevant in the local context. So thank you for that. So moving on to inviting our third panelist, Mr. Fuad Kharma. He is the head of project department at the CWA, the Cooperative Work Agency at Palestine. Mr. Fuad.
Yeah,
thank you for
thank you,
joining
Mr.
us.
Ganesh.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I'll shoot the first question to you. The cooperative movement in Palestine is, again, more than 100 years old. How have cooperatives helped the communities fare, especially during the times of conflict and crisis in Palestine?
I'm going to talk questions that were sent. The first one is how the help Palestine for months of conflict and crisis. We know that Palestine falls under the occupation date in the 30s and 20s, and which you know that we are Israeli occupation. In this long played an important of crisis. Most they provided decent housing for people because in remote areas people found it difficult to build houses, and either financially or because there are no they form decent housing and to protect land from 1940 when there was settlements by the Israelis. The cooperative housing also contributed to protecting activity. Also, in the chains, livestock sector, in the fishing subsector, in the plant production, all these value chains, the in providing to making
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Karma. Your voice is breaking a lot. Maybe please request you to reconnect, and meanwhile we can take questions with other panelists.
Is my voice being interpreted by?
Yes, it is
sorry.
breaking quite a lot. So if you can try to connect.
Excuse me, I'm going to disable the video because maybe it's. Okay. Can you now hear me well? Is there an interpretation?
Perfectly. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to. Also in the time of intifadas, or you know what intifada means, the uprising against the occupation. There were which helped Palestinians to wheat, like vegetables, like many kinds of wheat, to provide these, because in those periods there were lack in food, and the people lost their job opportunities, their jobs, so they didn't have money. So they formed informal cooperatives in order to find a way to provide themselves with food and other basic needs. That's in brief the role of cooperatives in times of a crisis. But I don't know if I can move now to talk about how the government helped cooperatives, especially since 2012 up to the moment. Mr. Ganesh?
Yes, indeed, Mr. Fuad. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Please go ahead. We can hear you.
The most important achievement by government, and also in collaboration with the ILO and other significant actors in the cooperative sector, was the enactment of the 2017 law, which was it was a long process. It started in 2010 when the draft law was prepared, and it was submitted to the president's office to be approved. And it remained there up to the 2017 and was enacted. And it stipulated for the establishment of the CWA, my organization, the Cooperative Work Agency. So this is the most important achievement in this regard. The CWA now has a dual role. It has a regulation role and a promotion role. And the regulation, I mean, it has to do with the registration and liquidation of cooperatives, and following up on their legal, administrative, and financial affairs. But there is another promotion role, which comes in has the same or a significant parallel importance with the first role. This role has to do with institutionalizing the cooperative sector through setting up certain institutions like the Cooperative Development Fund, which we are working on now, which is will be mandated with providing financial, services to the cooperatives, especially guarantees to their loans. And the Cooperative Development Institute, which we now are working on preparing the institutional framework for it, which will be charged with providing training and capacity building for cooperatives. Also, we are now working on
Mr. Fuad, you're breaking up again.
Okay, that's a problem.
Right.
Sorry, I was saying that
come back to you for the next question after our round. By then, you can probably reconnect, log out, and probably log in again.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So I think the last question that you were addressing was to how the CWA takes a balance between regulation and promotion, and how the International Year of Cooperatives and your engagement with international bodies like ILO eventually encouraged better regulations and a promotional environment for cooperatives in your country. And thank you for pointing out the changes in the laws in the 2017 Act and the establishment of the Cooperative Development Fund as well as the Cooperative Development Initiative, the institute in your country. Moving on to our next panelist, Mr. Charlie Bordwell, Enterprise Development. He's the Enterprise Development Specialist at the International Labour Organization. Welcome to our panel, sir. So I'll just shoot the first question. This year marks the decade of the International Year of Cooperatives 2012, and also the 20 years of the ILO's recommendation 193 on the promotion of cooperatives. How do you think these milestones have helped advance the cooperative movement in the Asia and Pacific region? Could you share any examples probably that you might have?
Well, thank you. I hope I'm coming across clearly.
Absolutely, thank you.
Very good. Good afternoon, good morning from London, different time of the day. In terms of the recent recommendations, 193 and earlier efforts that we've made, they've put forward concepts of appropriate policy, of having their application by governments and other parties, including employers and workers' organizations, promoting statistical information so we know what's happening, and of course education and training as core to development of these institutions. I think an earlier speaker, Mr. McMullen, did a very good job of outlining some of the benefits and the reasons that are behind these recommendations. And I think 193 promoted further the concept of decent work within cooperatives, the concept of fair wages, of secure jobs, of social protection and voice that stand at the heart of cooperatives, the concept of participation. In terms of examples that we've got, I'd have to look, I'll look at an example that I was deeply involved in. My role goes across types of enterprises, not just cooperatives, but SMEs, entrepreneurship, up through big enterprises and their implementation of decent work in global supply chains. One of the things that we learned was that much of what we were doing was often for highly capacitated, highly resourced institutions. And yet many of the partners we're dealing with were not highly resourced, nor did they have a great deal of training capacity within the institution. So we're providing them one model and they really needed another. With that in mind, we looked around, and in fact, it was in India that we found a model that was being implemented by a sister agency of ours, UNESCO, which was all grounded in activity-based learning. So allowing people to learn from each other. Activity-based learning means there is no trainer in the front of the room. It's the participants that are learning from each other and the materials that guide them through a discussion. So we've developed a family of tools, initially in Asia, but they've gone all over the world. They went from Cambodia and Myanmar on to Turkey and Bolivia, Central African Republic and Peru, Madagascar, and so on. So it was quite a successful development that came out of our program in Bangkok. And like I said, grounded in activity-based learning, it's called our co-op, and I can share the link to that in case anybody's interested in seeing how this has worked. Let me see, slideshow. So yes. These are the concepts that I said are behind it: activity-based, practical. When you allow people to base their learning on a discussion of their own reality, not some theoretical reality that's being provided by a trainer, it makes it very practical. It makes it very much applied to their own situation. We try to keep the training short because people in these communities don't have time. When you have a model which requires on bringing in some expert, it's both costly and it usually requires you to have a full day or even 3 or 4 days of training. And very often people don't have that in these communities that we're working with. So it also allows a flexible delivery model. Now, you can find anything on this at this location, learninghub.ilo.org, program.ourcoop. I'll leave that up for a moment while I talk briefly, we have tools for helping communities think about cooperation. So if you have a group of farmers, they can go through our Think Co-op module, and it leads them through a discussion of why they might want to work together. If they decide to take that forward, there's another module, Start Co-op, which leads them through thinking about what they have to do to start a cooperative. And finally, we have a Manage Co-op as a module. Now, all of these are very, easily adopted by organizations. That's the whole idea, that it doesn't require us to spend 2 years training up a network of experts that can use it. People can use it tomorrow as soon as they read through the materials. I do also want to point out that, of course, the ILO, in terms of training and development, provides a real broad range of tools. Training tools, reports, guides, all kinds of stuff. The topics that are listed here are all covered under that website, cooperatives/areas of work. If anybody needs these, I'll post them into the chat. So with that, yes, we've tried to help out in the ways that we can across the region, but there's an endless array of need. So we're always happy to help out with organizations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlie. I think both these examples that you've cited, I've also personally tried them out, and very useful, very interesting tools, both start.coop and think.coops. In fact, just reiterating on the point that you said, R.coop and tools like this promote decentralized collectivization based not on theoretical frameworks, but on our own reality. Thank you for that. So moving on back to our friend Faisal. Bula Faisal, are you here? All right, maybe I'll go back to Mr. Raman Ahuja. So the second question.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, thank you, Faisal. So shooting the second question to you. Since 2013, on an average, around 20 new cooperatives have registered with your department each year. Did the department use the International Year of Cooperatives 2012 as an opportunity to create more awareness among the Fijian population? What are your experiences in this regard?
Thank you, Ganesh. I think, yes, we did use the International Year of Cooperatives 2012 as a launching pad to probably create more awareness. And that got sort of started the awareness process in Fiji. However, from that, we've been able, from the initial 2012 IYC, we've been able to build on our awareness programs. And to the extent that now it is discussed at the very highest level of Fiji in the parliament to those at the most remote part of Fiji, particularly in the small rural areas, in the villages, in your suburbs, in your informal settlements. Fijians continues to talk about cooperatives. Just some rough figures are thrown in the last 5 years. We have probably conducted more than 800 face-to-face awareness sessions, and probably these numbers has sort of went down during the pandemic due to the travel restrictions. But we have sort of also adopted virtual awareness sessions. So we have taken advantage of virtual tools to undertake awareness sessions. We have also relied on traditional media, such as the newspaper, the radio, and TV to promote cooperatives. And we cannot discount the fact or the importance of social media tools, whereby we have also relied very heavily to promote the work of cooperatives, the work of the department, and we have sort of digitized our awareness sessions, our awareness tools, our awareness mode of approach. We have also conducted awareness. We ensure that we also conduct awareness in the local vernaculars, so that's more easy to grasp. And this has led to a vast increase in registrations. So whilst you may have quoted registrations since 2013, but just since the pandemic, since 2019, we have registered about 120 cooperatives. So that is the last 3 years, we have registered about 40 cooperatives annually. That has doubled the average estimate that was provided. Although the department has always been actively created in awareness, the recognition by the UN in regards to the International Day of Cooperatives did help amplify government's efforts to put cooperatives on the map and for the Pacific Islands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faisal, for your experiences on the International Year of Cooperatives and how dissemination of the message has actually helped. And it's a wonderful number. I mean, you've actually doubled the average number of cooperatives registered each year. That is a very encouraging sign also. And I think at the government level, one of the examples that I'm reminded of from the earlier panel also is when Mr. Jiro had mentioned they had a national council to commemorate the International Year of Cooperatives from 2012 to 2022, which is this year. So moving on to the next question to Mr. Ramana Huja. It has been 4 years since the launch of the UN Decade for Family Farming. Can you share your views on how the regional and national strategies and action plans have been developed to implement the UNDFF in South Asia, and how they're helping the promotion of cooperatives, or rather cooperation among small holder farmers? Over to you, sir.
Sure, Ganesh, thanks. So the UN Decade of Family Farming aims at strengthening the family farming and promoting diversified and innovative agri-food systems. And all of this is contributing to the 2030 agenda. The 7 pillars identified for the implementation of UNDFF are fully consistent with the overall spirit and guiding principles of SDG framework. So family farming in India is contributing significantly to the food production of the country, with more than 85% of the farmers being small and marginal, having an average holding size of just about 0.4 hectares. These farms are mostly managed by family members who have reduced access to institutionalized credit and other benefits that are typically available to the small, medium, and large farm households. However, the resilience of these small and marginal farming households, which are family farmed, to climate change is very high due to the large number and the lesser dependency on market inputs. I mean, the word dependency here, should be taken in the right context. Market inputs rarely reach these, small and marginal farmers. So just by default, they become more resilient. These family farms are also important because they involve women, more women compared to men. And we've seen that in the Indian context, where men folk typically migrate to peri-urban, urban areas for seasonal employment. And what is equally important is, the contribution of these family farms in terms of maintaining biodiversity. The fact that they don't have access to modern inputs, the seed, the formal seed system, etc. So just by sheer default, they manage with local land races, indigenous varieties, and so on and so forth. So these traditional practices, whether these are being done by indigenous people or other smallholder producers, are actually contributing significantly to preservation of biodiversity. In India, the present programs and policies do support family farming in terms of cluster approach, value chain development, and a broader social engagement. However, there is a need to revitalize family farming traditions with more emphasis on empowering women, engaging youth, so that we can enhance the productivity and profitability of these family farms. And equally, these farms are able to provide nutrition sensitive opportunities for nutrition sensitive agriculture. They provide enhanced rural livelihoods. So our future policies need to focus on extending access to credit, tenure, especially for women, and community-driven innovations in these family farms. Building and strengthening cooperatives is a critical part of the UNDFF's action plan, and this includes development of value chains, providing space for engaging farmers through their organizations in in actually the broader decision-making process. And as I mentioned earlier, using ICT tools for raising awareness. And I go back to the example of Ito-san, where he mentioned most of the community members did not know that they were part of the cooperatives. So I think it's important to use these modern tools to increase awareness, which will also enhance peer-to-peer learning opportunities, and also engage farmers to markets. I mean, I'll briefly talk about two of the action pillars of the 7 pillars of UNDFF. Pillar number 1, enabling social, economic, and political environment for family farmers is fundamental to success of family farm movement. I mean, these will contribute to zero hunger and poverty reduction and sustainable food systems. Scope of enabling environment should include policies both at the local level and at a national level, enabling acts and rules and regulations. And I think Government of India is actively working on this, and also using community-based resources which will allow family farmers to go beyond their own defined piece of land or water body or whatever it is. FAO and IFAD in 2019 presented that the policy shift that we're talking about here in family farm needs to be grounded on reliable, timely, and locally relevant data and evidence-based inputs, on family farming and its progress. So there also needs to be a clear framework which connects the family farm with the whole agri-food system. So this is absolutely critical as we go forward. The second pillar that I'm going to talk about is pillar number 4, strengthen family farmers' organizations and capacities to generate knowledge, represent farmers, provide inclusive services in the urban-rural continuum. This also encompasses strengthening the agriculture cooperatives, including, the governance and organizational capabilities of the family farming organizations, bringing technical expertise and capacity to the members for livelihoods and managing the landscapes, and obviously ensuring collective action through transparent and inclusive organizations. So yeah, these are some of the areas where work is going on UNDFF under the FAO. Happy to discuss more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So quickly moving on to Mr. Charlie again. So the next question we'd like to ask is, the ILO website does mention that it views cooperatives as an important vehicle in improving the life and working conditions of women and men globally, and as well as making essential infrastructure and services available even in areas that are neglected by the state, and even in investor-driven enterprises, as for that matter. So could you list some activities or initiatives that the ILO has been taking up to promote the development of cooperatives in the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, we have I got to admit, in the region that I cover, which is East Asia, we've had less activity than we've had in South Asia. There's been more initiatives, more projects, and I think some of that, we as an organization go where the funds are, where the interest is from donors, and I hate to say that's driven by that more than it should be. I think some of the most interesting work has taken place outside of my territory. For example, in Sri Lanka, where we've had a project called LEAD, the Local Economic Empowerment Program. And that has been working in northern Sri Lanka to support some of the post-conflict communities there and working with rural communities in the area. And what I think it's been very effective at is being grounded in the realities that are taking place there. And I think that's one of the strengths of the cooperative movement, because it's always grounded in the communities in which these cooperatives operate. LEAD has worked with the fishing communities to help them with the marketing and the fair trade labeling of some of their goods that they're actually promoting. So that is one example that I think I would highlight.
Thank you so much, Ali. I think LEAD is a very effective project I think ILO has had in South Asia, especially focusing on conflict affected households and improving the value chains in fisheries. Thank you for highlighting that. So I think I'll go back to Faisal. The question that we want to ask you is the Target 100 initiative that was started by the Fijian government in January 2018 to assist and guide 100 cooperatives across Fiji to be fully compliant with the Cooperative Act. Could you share one or two examples that come to mind of successful cooperatives that were actually part of this initiative of your government?
Thank you. Yes, the 100 initiative was started by the Fijian government in 2018, basically to guide and assist cooperatives becoming fully compliant, because prior to 2018, I understand that at that point in time, the department and the team had faced a number of increase in non-compliance towards the Cooperatives Act, and therefore led to a lot of collapses, a lot of failures, led to a lot of mismanagement. And therefore, we thought that by introducing this initiative, they should improve good governance, they should improve greater compliance, they should improve the better overall industry as a whole. So a point in case is that we have seen an increase in submission of financial accounts. At one point in time, we were receiving close to about 100, close to 150, 160 accounts annually. So this is basically due to the constant, like I was saying, hand-holding, constant awareness, the constant aggressive approach taken by the cooperatives team to go out to the communities, go out to the cooperatives and make them aware of their obligations under the Cooperative Act. And that has resulted in increase in accounts, meaning that when they're able to submit more accounts, we're able to collect more data. And as policymakers, once we get more data, we're able to provide the right interventions. That has led to the overall success of the industry so far. Just one cooperative I would like to touch on is the Nature's Way Cooperative, whereby it was established in 1995. That was the quarantine treatment of fruit and vegetables under the BQA arrangement for important countries. Basically, it is a treatment facility whereby before exporters export their produce, they would go through this treatment, grading, packaging, and clearance before it goes leaves Fiji shores to reach the exporter destination. So this is a cooperative made up of exporters and plus farmers who are part of this cooperative. And through the Cooperative Act, they have been managing to comply with the Act in terms of the governance, in terms of the meetings, in terms of submission of accounts, in terms of all the statutory obligations that's required under the Cooperative Act. And they are one of our best performing cooperatives, whereby they are able to generate close to $500,000 in a year and hold above $1.1 million worth of assets. So we can see that with strong governance, with strong compliance with the Act, this has led to our success of the cooperative. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Faisal. I think quite a few examples you've pointed out where the department itself is getting into hand-holding, training and guidance, merely moving away from regulation to kind of hand-holding these cooperatives for better compliance and better cooperative governance, in fact. Thank you so much for showing us this model that you've tried out in Fiji.
Sorry, Ganesh, you're mute.
Oh, am I audible? Right. Thank you, Faisal, for the examples that you've given now and earlier in the questions, where the ministry itself is moving from regulation to more of hand holding and training and guidance, and kind of helping the cooperatives move into better cooperative governance. And I think this is a model that we can emulate from Fiji. Thank you so much for highlighting this. I'll quickly want to go back to Mr. Raman Ahuja and ask a question, an India-specific question, given that you're based here. The government of India has created a Ministry of Cooperation to promote the development of cooperatives, and it marks 1 year now in July 2022. What are the areas you feel the ministry should focus on the promotion of the development of agriculture and cooperatives? If you could quickly touch upon from your experiences in India.
Sure, Ganesh, thanks. Just to set the context for my response, Ganesh, what I want to say is that PACs in India, or the primary agriculture credit societies, have been the backbone of the agriculture sector in post-independent India. A quick look at some stats. Currently the PACs have about 11% share of total agriculture credit. However, they're covering 19% of the farmers. Yeah, this 11% was 60% market share in the 50s. Of these 19% farmers, or 26 million farmers, the share of small and marginal farmers in the total loan amount dispersed by these cooperatives is almost 70%. And when you compare that to the commercial banks, their share was 47%. So clearly, the well-performing PACs are actually delivering on the agenda for small and marginal farmers, which is very, very difficult for the regular banking system. Of the 95,000 odd PACs registered in the country, almost half of them have delivered profits. And this is based on the Central Bank of India, the Reserve Bank of India. So PACs, which is the primary vehicle for credit in the agriculture sector in India, have delivered. They've been dormant in the past. So clearly there is an opportunity here. And I think the Ministry of Cooperation is looking at it very aggressively. There are announcements coming out every day. I think recently they announced about $350 million budget for digitization of these of 63,000 PACs. So there's a huge opportunity. The business of some of the well-diversified primary agriculture credit societies in some of the states can go up to almost $1 billion to 1.25 billion rupees per annum. This is linked to credit. And when you compare this to the business of any commercial bank, which is just about 300 million to 400 million in the same area. So the PACs that are doing well clearly stand out. And this has been possible because these societies offer credit and non-credit services. And the non-credit services, which obviously have lower risk, they significantly contribute to the overall businesses. I think one of the best ways that PACs could become prominent players in the rural financial services could be transforming these PACs into multi-service centers that provide a diversified suite of services and products to the local community. What this will do is de-risk the operations of these PACs. So a good example is Mulkanur Cooperative Rural Bank and Marketing Society in Telangana state, which was set up primarily to accept deposits from and extend loans to its members for agriculture and allied activities. Over the years, this cooperative society has expanded its services. They do trading in pesticides, seed, fertilizers, custom hiring equipment, and so on and so forth, and a wide range of value-added services in the agriculture sector. And they are also moving to the consumer store side. So there are very good examples on well-performing PACs, and the government clearly is looking at it. There's an announcement that came yesterday that government will be releasing model bylaws, a model PAC law, which the states could look at and adopt, which would allow a whole host of activities to be done by PACs, including being banking correspondent, being able to run a petrol pump, and so on and so forth. So I think what the government is seeing is that these existing well-functioning agriculture credit societies have a huge potential, and this needs to be unshackled through enabling laws and regulatory environment, and obviously bringing in modern tools like digitization and so on and so forth. And another point that I would like to mention in this regard is, and going back to the examples from Australia, I think in the Indian context we need to recognize that more than 2/3 of the rural economy is non-agriculture and consists of service sectors, trade, shops, micro and small and medium enterprises. The latest national sample survey shows that almost half the income of agriculture households come from non-agriculture sources. So we need to also go beyond the agriculture credit societies and then expand their mandate to increase some of these other subsectors of the economy, so that the credit system becomes more resilient. And if one of the sectors is actually going through a downturn, the other can contribute. The lessons from what we've heard from Japan and Australia and how well these cooperatives have been integrated into an overall economy will hold a good stead for the Indian context, especially in the agri-food sector, where it's very, very critical to make sure we have localized circular economy where communities are resilient, cooperatives are able to bear the risk and also contribute to emergencies and so on and so forth. So I think just a last point I want to make here is the government of India introduced FPOs, a farmer producer organization, and farmer producer companies, and this is over a decade old now, which is similar to the joint stock company in Japan. As of 2021, India has over 10,000 FPOs, with more than 1 million farmers being their members. I think the experience with the FPO FPC remains very mixed, and I must say these are very early days. So 10-year in institution building is very short time, but it's important at the same time to reflect that there are 47,000 profitable packs. There's an urgent need to encourage professionalization of these packs, bringing them into the broader economy. We know that today the farmers are not satisfied with the service delivery and transactions that private players bring, and more often than not, they seek intervention and support from the governments for a host of services: input supply, marketing, value addition, so on and so forth. So cooperatives are a medium to facilitate the shift, from rising dependence of the rural communities on state to empowered and self-reliant communities. So I think there is a lot of opportunity here. The government is seriously looking at that. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ahuja. I think very important points that you've raised on the dichotomy of the market share versus how PACs, modernization and reinventing their role can add to the circular economy, especially in the primary sector. Thank you so much for that. So now, due to the paucity of time, moving on to the last and final question, back to Charlie. The Cooperative Principle 5, Education, Training and Information, lays special emphasis on training of members, leaders, managers, and employees of cooperatives. How does our training program, developed by this unit, stress on this particular principle? I know you mentioned this earlier by listing down all three, but more specifically, if you can just point out quickly before we wind up.
Yeah, certainly. I'm happy to mention again, our co-op tools are just one family. That we have the Think, Start, and Manage co-op available in different languages, maybe not the language that you'd need, but we'd always be happy to see that language portfolio expand. But they're just one. And I put the 2 links earlier in the website. The second link links to all the different programs and activities of our cooperative program globally. And we have a program called My Co-op, which has been implemented all over the world, and is trainer based, and therefore really depends on your needs and how it fits for your circumstances. But there is a ton of material that, of course, has been developed over the century plus that we've been involved in the cooperative movement. I would suggest that if something specific interests you, that you contact the local ILO office, whether that's in India or Sri Lanka or Suva, and they would be able to point you in the right direction or point you back to headquarters in the cooperative unit there.
Thank you so much, Charlie. I think probably with this, more people are going to be aware of these tools, not just within the existent cooperative community, but even others who will check it out. Thank you so much to all four of our panelists for joining us today. So I would like to hand over to our regional director, Mr. Balasubramanian Iyer, for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Ganesh, and thank you very much, everyone. I see that we are across the time zones. It's past 8 p.m. in Fiji and 9 a.m. in London. So that's the geography that we've covered. So I'd like to thank all our speakers and panelists, and of course participants, for joining us today. I think there are a number of issues which have been touched upon in terms of changes that have happened since 2012 to now. We've seen, so what I will briefly go through is look at what have been said as the changes that have happened and what more needs to be done. And I hope this answers the question on challenges in the Asia Pacific region. What we've seen is there have been growth in number of members, growth in number of cooperatives, growth in capital share. And the numbers have been shown. I think the presentations were by NCF, by JCA and BCCM. And that's very important that we document, we have numbers. In many countries, that's one of the lacuna in terms of data on cooperatives is not readily available. So having, I think, data collected in a systematic manner and being able to present it to policymakers to show the contribution that cooperatives are making, or also using that data when it comes to reporting on, be it the ESGs or in the voluntary national review, I think becomes important. The second is we've seen that cooperatives have increased or improved their access, be it in terms of financial access, access to housing, addressing needs of access of people with disability. I think here there is still more work to be done. Cooperatives have been historically focused on the rural sector, agriculture in particular, looking at meeting credit needs and production needs. But increasingly in countries, the services sector is growing. And so how do we increase the share of cooperatives in the services sector? And in the process, I think increase our contribution to the GDP. Again, some of the presentations have shown that cooperatives are contributing, though the percentages vary across. But I think there is more work to be done, and getting more into the services would help to increase the contribution of cooperatives. The presentations have also shown that cooperatives have stepped up during times of crisis and in disasters. And in the Asia Pacific region in particular is one of the most disaster-prone regions in the globe. And I think disasters are going to be a recurring phenomenon, are something which we need to go live with. So how do we, while addressing needs at time of disasters, how do we also build resilience in communities, I think becomes very important. And here, the examples of stabilization funds being created, solidarity fund being created, I think that becomes important. How do we use or grow funds which are able, which we can put into use during times of need? I think that again, a response to disaster, building resilience, creating a fund becomes important. We have seen that cooperatives have been recognized, be it in the constitution. Nepal was given as an example, being recognized by creating new acts, the Workers' Cooperative Act in Japan. Updating of acts, I think, are all important. But at the same time, I think what we see also is not all the changes proposed are positive, be it in the case of banks in India or in other countries or in agriculture in Japan. So what it is also important is to stay on our toes, to be aware of the changes that are being proposed and how it affects cooperative. Affects more, not laws are the prerogative of the government, and they can change it. But then we need to be vigilant in terms of, are they impinging upon our values and principles? And if that's the case, then I think there's a need for us to stand up and advocate against some of the changes which are being proposed. Contribution to the sustainable development goals, I think, will become very important. And when we talk about the next decade, 2030 is when will be the end of the 15 years of the sustainable development goal. So I'm hoping that, again, our contribution to the 17 SDGs will be enhanced. And this, in the process, will help enhance visibility of cooperatives at the international level, at the national level, even in country, because the voluntary national reports are prepared through a consultative process where civil society, government, policymakers, academicians all come together. And more conversation about contribution of cooperatives happens here. It helps to enhance our visibility, which I think is important. There was mention about curriculum. I think that's again very important, be it in schools, be it in colleges, be it in universities. I think curriculum is one way to enhance knowledge about cooperatives, because many of the presenters have said there is lack of awareness, even though lack of awareness even on part of the members. So if members themselves are not too aware, then you can well imagine the public. So how do we, I think, enhance, spread awareness about cooperatives in educational institutions? What are the other means that we can use to promote awareness, to encourage more youth to join cooperatives will become important. At the same time, we also need to see how we can enhance participation of women. Participation, again, not just in terms of being members, but in terms of leadership, in decision-making roles, I think becomes important. And some of the numbers from Australia show that cooperatives are slowly enhancing or increasing representation of women at different levels. The role of government, we heard from Faisal and Mr. Faham, that is very important, both in terms of regulation and promotion. And in the process, I think we need to, in terms of creating an enabling environment, be it in terms of updating law, supporting through finance, ensuring compliance, I think is absolutely critical for cooperatives. And finally, I think the role of international agency is also very important when it comes to recognition of role, building resilience, and providing voice to cooperatives in policy dialogue. So we've seen again how all the actors have an important role to play: cooperatives, government, international stakeholders. And here again, we are in 2022. The world is again rapidly veering towards recession, reeling from high prices of essential commodities because of war and pandemic, and facing the prospect of millions again regressing into cooperatives. So cooperatives are again need to step up and show how they are building a better world by bringing economic resources under democratic control, creating ownership of resources, providing employment opportunities, building resilience and protecting the environment, and creating social capital. And this was well captured by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He said cooperatives are answering the wake-up call, excuse me. And he warned that the world is on the edge of an abyss and moving in the wrong direction. We need to restore trust, inspire hope. We need cooperation, we need dialogue, and we need understanding. Cooperatives have centuries of history in doing that. We are being once again called upon to step up and address needs of members and communities. And the presentations and panel discussions showed that we are doing that, but we still need to do more. So thank you very much again to everyone for joining our webinar today.
Thank you, Mr. Iyer. And thank you everyone for joining and staying back for more than 2 hours. I would request all of you to kindly switch on your cameras for a group photo before we finish the event today. Yeah, so we'll take a picture now. Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.
Right.